thought, I'd played college hockey. I know the sport. I knew about the line. I knew everything that was going to happen. But when the game started, the first time they do a line shift, and all of a sudden there's 10 new players, like this head wanted to explode. And it was a disaster.
Today on the Sideline, I'm talking with Memphis-based play-by-play sports broadcaster Jeff Brightwell is up next. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports, talking with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that makes the sports world great. A quick reminder, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, go and subscribe right now. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Audible, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about the show, visit our website at 5thquarterpodcast.com. Now, grab your iced tea or your coffee, get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. Today's guest on the Sideline is a veteran play-by-play broadcaster, a University of Memphis graduate and longtime voice for the Memphis Tigers. Jeff's career has spanned nearly 3 decades across TV, digital, and radio, calling everything from NCAA to pro sports. Based right here in Memphis, he's brought the game to life on platforms like ESPN, CBS Sports Network, and more. Today, we're digging into his journey, the evolution of broadcasting, and his love for the craft, and what it takes to stay in the game this long. I couldn't be more excited to welcome to the show, Jeff Brightwell. Jeff, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to it. It's a little bit different being the interviewee instead of the interviewer, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, yeah. So I always love to tell people how I know my guests, and we actually know each other through the Memphis Rebounders. And I moved back to Memphis in 2020 and got involved with the Rebounders. And you host the Penny Hardaway Show, which we'll talk about later in the show. And so we just kind of, I'm all about saying hello to everybody and just making friends. And so that's how we know each other. So I just want to start out. Did you grow up here in Memphis?
I was born and raised in Memphis. I've
Okay.
lived here my entire life, except for the 6 years I moved up to Missouri to start my broadcast career. I know we'll get into that later, but at that time there was no digital streaming of any
Right.
kind. You had to get out of town and get somewhere you could get on air.
So did you grow up playing sports?
Yeah, I grew up. You're playing like youth league soccer in elementary, and started out in kindergarten at Woodland Presbyterian, then played junior high football at Harding Academy. That's where I went to high school. I started out at Memphis State Campus School. Then went to Harding Academy Junior High and high school. Played football in junior high. Picked up baseball in high school. Played for my
Wow.
played for my church at Aldersgate United Methodist over there on Willow Road in Park Commission ball. And then actually played college hockey, club hockey at the University of Memphis. We had there's been a couple different versions of the club hockey team.
Yes.
Got people that want to play it. You have a team. If you don't have enough, club sports, you just don't have a team.
Right. And that's is that how you know the racquetball and handball players? Because some of them were on the hockey team too?
Yeah, Chris Jennings was one of the handball
Yes.
players, and I got to know him. I know he's a friend of yours, and
Yes.
yeah, that was a great experience in college. I never played hockey growing up. It was just a club team.
Right.
An inline hockey was starting, so I had rollerblades and played up at East End on Wednesday nights. Went to a club hockey game the first year they had it, and they had some good players, but they also had some guys that were falling down. And I thought, well, I can do that. So $100 a semester, and so I joined the team and played for 4 years. It was a great experience.
So tell me this: if you played all those sports, why didn't you progress in one of the sports itself? Like, why didn't you play as an athlete? Continue.
I played there in like I said, high school and junior high and college, but I was never a good enough athlete to accelerate onto the pro level or even the NCAA level. I was happy to be on the team, happy to get my minutes, especially in college hockey. Decent in the Park Commission, but if you could throw the ball over the plate and make contact, you were pretty good for Memphis Park Commission ball back then. I liked playing, but didn't accelerate past that level.
It's interesting you talk about the hockey being a club sport, racquetball and handball are club sports, as is rugby. And I always find that really interesting because I had the rugby coach on here last year, and
Yeah.
he talked about basically the players have to pay to play, which is really crazy. Um, so, I wish that because we had, back in the late 80s, early 90s, we had a great racquetball, like
Oh,
world
yeah.
class racquetball team and handball team. And I think it's interesting that they're only club sports and not considered an NCAA sport.
Yeah, I know it's cliche. You're playing for the love of the game, and you pay your
Yeah,
fees and
literally.
being on the team. You want to, and that's one of those things. If you don't, I mean, if you're not going to accelerate to a pro level, you probably weren't going to accelerate to the NCAA level. So you're just, you're trying to
Right.
extend getting to go out and play games for as long as you can. So it's interesting. You talk about the different caveats in club sports.
Hmm.
We all had to pile into cars and go to our road games. We got a bus for one weekend
Right.
to go to Kentucky and in Lexington, and that was a unique experience. And then, of course, if you're club sports, you can't use the branded logo.
Yeah.
I have an original from the very first year Memphis State hockey jersey, but
Oh
after
my
that, as
God.
soon as that came out, the school and the athletic department, I think, saw it and said, "Yeah, you can't use the official. That's an athletic mark. It's trademarked."
Right.
Went with a plain M after that, but I've still got a Memphis State hockey jersey, the MSU logo.
You're such a rebel. You really are. Uh, okay, so when did the love of broadcasting or something equivalent to that? When did that like come into your periphery of like I could do this or I want to do this?
I think it's when I was a little kid. I remember playing with a cassette recorder back in the. I was born in 1972, so I'm a child of the 80s. So
Okay, I'm older than you.
but you record stuff off the radio and hoping the DJ doesn't talk over the front of the song. And so a lot of pausing and recording and playing and then doing stuff myself, playing DJ or
Right.
sportscaster. I had an uncle. He didn't live in Memphis. He lived in Georgia and a lot of other places. At one point, he was in radio and he was a DJ, and we had some of his old tapes and went and saw him at the studio one time. So it maybe sprung from that a little bit.
Right. Um, so how did that progress? Once you got in high school, was that something you started doing on the side, or how did you think about your career, or were you even thinking about career at
Oh
that
yeah.
time?
I mean, I think I knew from junior high that I was want to get into being a play-by-play broadcaster. I knew it real
Right.
early. So from junior high to high school into college, that's exactly what I wanted to do. Probably the biggest compliment that has ever been paid to me was a friend I saw in Tiger Lane in high school a couple of years ago. He's passed away since then, but I remember him coming up to me at the pregame show on Tiger Lane, and we were just talking before we went on the air. He goes, you may be the one person from high school that's doing exactly what
Yeah.
they want to do. Because we all talk in high school. What do you want to do? Well,
Yeah.
life happens, different circumstances. And he was like, you're probably the one person that's doing exactly what you
Yeah.
wanted to do.
Speaking of that, it's interesting. It's going to freak everybody out. I wanted to be an archaeologist. Like
Okay.
literally from the time I was little, and even I started graduate school in anthropology because I wanted to go and dig. And then ended up going into teaching. But yeah, yeah, most people don't do what they wanted to do, or they
Oh,
said they were going
you find different interests. And like I said, life happens. You don't know
to.
what's high school, you're living in a bubble, even college to a point you're living in a
Yes.
bubble. The day after I graduated, I was driving around the Zach Curlin and thinking, oh, this is weird because it's about to be the real world now.
Yeah, exactly. So, what was that like? You're going through college. Did you have a plan of how you were going to turn your degree? Like what was your degree specifically?
Broadcast and electronic media, graduated in 96. And at that point, the university had a radio station. I don't know if you remember, had old,
Right.
so originally WSMS, Spirit of Memphis State, changed to WMR, University of Memphis Radio, when the school changed its name. They sold that station off in 2019 to the Crosstown Concourse. That's now the
Oh,
public
yeah.
radio station that the
Yeah.
Memphian, I think, helps operate down there. And it has some student ties, but it's really not University of Memphis Radio anymore. But I knew my I wouldn't say specific plan, but my
Mhm.
mother worked at the University of Memphis in HR, so I knew I was going to get half off tuition. They had a radio station, so from high school, I knew I was headed to the University of Memphis.
It's a shame that we don't have another
Yeah.
radio show on campus.
I think it's just economics. It was a jazz format, and
Yeah.
let's face it, if you're 18 to 22,
Yeah.
and I'm not knocking jazz, but that's probably not what you're into. So it didn't get a lot of student participation. It was mostly volunteer help. But the one thing they did is they broadcast the home basketball and football games, and also baseball and women's basketball was on there, but they had a professional broadcaster do those games,
Right.
but the students could do the football and the basketball. So I knew I could get in there. I walked into the first day my freshman year and said, I want to get involved. What do I need to do? I don't care what I'm doing, but it's my first day, so I want to go ahead and get on the ground floor.
I love that attitude. And it's a shame because, the university could provide internships to
Yeah.
to do the radio show. Now, I know like this business school, they have a new podcast out. So I think they're having the students do that. But that is, a very good thing about that. Okay, so you go full in through college and everything, and you're about to graduate. What did you think your job was going to be then?
In college, I was fortunate enough in college to get a part-time job at WREC. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm board opping, which means you're just at that point, there's no computer automation. So somebody had to be at the studio 24 hours a day. And if you're in college, you're working a lot of midnight to 6 a.m.
Right.
Well, WREC used to be, they didn't have the games. When I was in college, Kicks 106 had the games, but WREC did the coaches show. They had a sports show. They did this big post game show down in the Pinch District after the games were down in the Pyramid. Mark Bilek, who called the women's basketball and baseball games back then, worked and did the sports for them. So he got me in with Drake Hall, who was a DJ, obviously, and he was the PD for WREC. Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I'll be transparent. I was an awful student. So my GPA, I got a little over my 2. I knew what I wanted to do. So I didn't hate school, but I had other interests than doing the homework
Right.
and stuff. So I was like, just get my degree, did well in my radio classes. Anyway, I went to Drake Hall and Dr. Bob McDowell, who ran the radio department at the university, and asked him about an internship. And they were just like, your grades aren't going to get you an internship. And now Drake calls me, goes, well, I've got a part-time job. I'm like, well, yeah, I would rather make money. It's the exact
Sure.
same thing. And I'm making money. So I went to work part-time there. And that kind of, at least that got me some resume material.
Mm-hmm.
Because back then, if you didn't work at a radio station, there was no, like I said, online streaming or anything. So
Right.
that's kind of how I dipped into that. And then as I got ready to graduate college, you had to do it the old-fashioned way. The internet was there then, so there were the state broadcasters associations would have job postings.
Right.
So I just flooded it out into the Southeast and the Midwest to land my first radio job. However, I did work for the River Kings, the old
I
minor
remember them. Yeah,
team.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Worked out. I was looking for a job, and Jim Riggs, the general manager, I knew him a little bit. Someone connected me with him, and he called me like 3 days before the 96, 97 season. He goes, Jeff, we need some help. I need you to go to Fort Worth for spring training, if you will, for fall training. Just do some reports. And when I got back, again, it's a couple days for the season. He goes, look, I know this is not what you want to do. I know you're wanting to get in the radio, but the merchandiser job is open. You'll do ticket sales. You can
Right.
help with our broadcast. Just work for us for the season. It'll help you out, give you a little bit of experience. So got started with the River Kings and then moved out the next year.
You know, speaking of that, what you just said, and all the other things about how you reached out to people, you were like, I'm here. I want to do something, whatever I can do, I want to do it. And I think that what I see today, and it's not just from people in college or right at, it's people that have been working for 10, 15, 20 years. Nobody seems to want to go that extra mile. They want to sit and wait for people to come to them. And I think that's, so many people miss that opportunity for whatever reason. And I love, Jessica Benson was on here too, and she talked about the same thing, going out and like putting herself out there and saying, this is what I want to do. How can I show up every day and do that? And I think that, that also speaks great links about how you've been able to keep your career going.
Yeah, and it's not as difficult as it used to be, I think. I mean, it used
Yeah.
to be, I mean, if you weren't a social person, I mean, you remember back
Yeah.
in the day, again, I mean, I hate to keep going back to this, but without internet, I mean, you really had to meet a lot of people face to face or run in
Sure.
or make the awkward phone call. I mean, a business person is picking up the phone and you're just like, I'm Jeff Brightwell and starting from scratch. And it's so weird at first, but now there's so many ways to connect with people on LinkedIn and social
Yes.
media. I like shooting an email because I think it's very unintrusive because they
Right.
can read the email. It really doesn't disturb their day. And if they see something that interests them, they can email you back or call
Sure.
you back or set up a Zoom or ask you to come in for a meeting. It's so much easier and, like I said, less intrusive
Right.
to go through email or social media these days.
I know. It's just there's so many things. I've met so many different people. Even before I moved from Houston back to Memphis, I was already on social media because I was teaching that and working with clients on that. But I really put myself into just showing up more online and connecting
Yeah.
with people even before I moved back. Do you remember the very first game you ever called?
Oh, yeah. It's a
Tell me about
disaster.
it.
Student radio. So I guess I'm a junior. So I'd moved up. I was doing the sports report on WUMR in the mornings. That's just 2 minutes. You
Right.
look for that 2 minutes airtime in the morning. And finally, Jeremy Mulder, who now he used to be on, I think, Froggy 94 in Memphis, but he's been in Pittsburgh forever. Well, he was graduating, so I moved into the sports director job. So I got paid for 5 hours a week. I think at like a
Right.
425 an hour. So I was in the big time in campus radio. First football game I did at the Liberty Bowl was Memphis and Southern Miss. I was all excited, but I didn't know anything. There were not a lot of resources to tell you how to do a ball game.
Right.
So I just rolled in the equipment, got some game notes. You don't realize how high you are up at the press box at the Liberty Bowl when the old press box still existed until you get there and try to call a game. I may have had some binoculars, but it was, I mean, you're sitting there through binoculars. I mean, right now we've got people that spot for you, and we've got TV monitors in the booth
Right.
that helps you. But yeah, it's funny, like in your mind, everything's spinning. It's almost like an athlete
Right.
when you hear a freshman talk about the game is just going so fast, and the biggest thing you have to do is slow it down in your head. And same thing for
Yeah.
calling games. And then the first professional broadcast I did was for the River Kings, and we went down to Macon. And I thought, I'd played college hockey. I know the sport. I knew about the line. I knew everything that was going to happen. But when the game started, the first time they do a line shift, and all of a sudden there's 10 new players, like just head wanted to explode. And it was a disaster. I mean, I knew it was bad. I mean, look, a broadcaster, they know if they've done a good job or not. Fortunately, a couple nights later, we played at Nashville in their old AA team, and you sat just above the ice, literally in the catwalk, looking over the
Wow.
ice. But what helped me, it was second game. I was able to slow it down. And at that point, when you're looking straight down on the ice, not from a press box, all the players have been over. So all I see are the numbers. It was so easy. It was like calling a video game. It made it so much better. But it's like a lot of things. You just
Hmm.
got to accept you're not going to be good at it when you start. Just go, and that's what I tell broadcasters now. Just go out and get a lot of reps. You'll be bad, but go somewhere you can make some mistakes and just continue to get your reps, just like an athlete does.
What my suggestion to people is think about the worst thing that can happen, and if you're okay with that,
Yeah,
then I mean everything else is good. But you're right. You're gonna make a mistake, lots of mistakes, and you just have to do it and just keep doing it. Absolutely. Um, so let's go through, you talked about slowing it down and having your notes. How do you prep for a game now?
all right. Now, obviously, we can go to a school's website or a team's website and get a lot of information for football, basketball. I'll make a chart for football. It looks like where the positions are, and then on the
Right.
side, it's got the numerical roster of who's going to handle the football. And basketball, it's a numerical chart straight down.
Mm-hmm.
The people that play the most, I kind of have them grouped up at the top, and then your
Right.
reserves that don't get a lot of minutes are at the bottom. Uh, Baseball actually make little note cards because you have so much stuff on the counter, and you've got 9 guys in the lineup, so I can just flip the note card.
Oh yeah.
So it's just a matter of copy and paste the biographical information onto that, fill in the stats, and then try to tell the story. The websites have a lot of information on
Right.
that. For ESPN Plus, like tonight, what I'm calling the as we're recording this, calling the Rice series. we get to do conference calls with the visiting coaches. Of course, I know Coach Reiser really well and with
Right.
the team, which makes it a lot easier if you're with the team. It makes it more personable because, and I don't want to go off, I'm not trying to go off on an exit here, but
That's okay.
I think a lot of times and I'm not trying to be this is how we used to do it, but I think a lot of broadcasts now they get so ingrained on technical
Hmm.
numbers and
Yeah.
stats, and I'd rather just tell stories. I think people are more interested, especially in baseball, because it's such a slower sport, more time to fill. Would
Right.
rather hear the stories, hear about the athletes themselves while you're calling the game. But an hour or two, I mean, you don't have to. When you start out, you're probably spending a lot more time on prep work. But
Right.
now I can throw it together in about an hour, especially if it's a team you're around all the time. If it's a Tiger sport,
Sure.
I know the athletes. You just need to know the other team a little bit, and you roll from there.
You talked about the stories. I love the stories. I'd rather hear the stories than all the stats. Um, you know, I remember watching the Olympics on NBC and it was Bob Costa.
Hmm.
I loved watching his broadcast because of the stories he would tell about the athletes, during the competitions. That's what I really like. And it makes the game more personable. It makes the athletes more personable. And I think it does a great job to tell the story of the school too, and just kind of do that.
Yeah, I mean, it tells a story of your team, your school, or the athlete, and what it helps me do. Uh, if a player's doing really well, or if the player's struggling, it gives you a reason why things may be going
Right.
well, why it's not going good. Also, the person that you want at the moment the game is on the line. You just see the personality traits, especially
Right.
if you go to a lot of practices. You'll know, like, player A is the one you want taking the shot. Player B, you don't even want them on the floor. And it's
That's
not
right.
not for a bad reason, because some people just enjoy the moment. They like
Hmm.
the pressure or they don't like the pressure. And it's just neat to see the different personalities.
So tell me this, for somebody that's in college right now or even in high school who wants to do play by play or some type of sports broadcasting, what would be two things that you would recommend to them as a way to prep or whatever?
Uh, Number one, just watch sports. You can get on YouTube. You can look at a lot of people's demo reels on YouTube, kind of see what they're putting out there. Find your favorite broadcaster. Don't try to be them, but you're going to pick things up on that. And the second thing, and I think this is most important, I think it's extremely important. To me, it's very important. Is the cliche is the best ability is availability.
Yes,
Be there. If
right.
someone offers you something, especially high school or college, don't turn it down. Do it. I've dealt with some students before that, as the internet age came around, and I'm talking like the last 5, 10, 15 years, when
Right.
they stream this before we got the ESPN Plus deal, but the school used to stream a lot of the Olympic sports and get a student and go, well, we've got all these Olympic sports you could broadcast. And they would say, well, I really just want to do football and basketball and some baseball. And I would go, well, my bad, Jim Nance. I didn't know you were so big time, since you have nothing on the resume. And if you don't know a sport, I think that also forces you to
It does.
yeah, it forces you to work a little bit and develop your craft. So availability is the best ability.
And I will say this, the more that you research a sport or any subject and the more you talk about it, the more you learn about it.
Right.
And it's, that's the same for anything. So absolutely on that. um so let's talk about, was has there been a sport that really challenges you when you're broadcasting?
Probably the sports that I didn't grow up playing. I mean, I do volleyball now. I mean, I didn't play soccer except for kindergarten, so it's not like I really knew a lot about it. But calling the Olympic sports and even softball, it's similar to baseball, but it's got uh, some little nuances that
Right.
aren't in baseball, like you can re-enter and stuff like that. Volleyball's been a lot of fun to kind of learn that. When I was going to start doing our webcast, so I went to this school, I guess about '07,
Hmm.
and our streaming deal used to be through CBS Sports, and you could put everything you want. I guess they just play the flat fee, but they would stream like volleyball and soccer and other sports, but they wouldn't have an announcer. So I
Right.
just went to the school and go, hey, why don't you pay me like 25 or $50 and I'll plug my mixer into the camera and, announce the game. So I went to a volleyball match, preseason match was, I wanted to learn some of the language. So I sat down at the
Right.
course table with some people. Like, I'm going to ask y'all some questions. And so someone comes up, of course, spikes it and goes, all right, that's a spike. And the first thing they're like, no, 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 no. This is not Top Gun. It's not a spike. So it's a kill. It's an attack. Don't call it a spike on the broadcast. So it's just little things like that that you learn to do.
Volleyball has really taken off.
Yeah.
I was seeing this past season the volleyball in Nebraska. Like
Yeah.
it's been
Oh yeah.
huge. Like
Yeah.
selling out everywhere. It's great.
It's huge up north and out west, and hopefully here in the southeast, especially within the American, it continues to grow. Memphis has an advantage now since they have the Lori Walton Center and volleyball moved over to the Finch Center. Is
Right.
there are not a lot of volleyball only facilities in the NCAA. So got a
Interesting.
coaching change at Memphis now. I mean, you've had the Finch Center for a couple of years. I know they've got some more things they want to do to it. So it's kind of neat in there. And then getting into the soccer at Memphis too. I've been fortunate because the women's program, right when I started, did PA for a few years and then started doing the stream. And that was like a year or two before they won that first string of five
Right.
championships. So, I've been incredibly lucky to call the soccer programs, especially the women, because I've been able to do all their runs. I've been able to do
Right.
conference championship games, NCAA tournament games, and then you see what the men's program is done the last 3 or 4 years. As Coach Morgan
Right.
really got the men's program going.
Yeah, it's really great not only to see, these other sports besides football and basketball, but to see the women's sports
Yeah.
really excel and take off. And I love that. I've been a little vocal about the lack of news coverage for women's sports. Not just, in Memphis specifically. I've had some discussions about that. But, I really love seeing how those female sports are really starting to really take off and people are coming out and there's more coverage and all of that.
I think the biggest thing probably is just how big the U.S. women's national team got. I mean, you've got to have
Yes.
that. You've got to have that bell cow, nationally to spark that entrance as it filters on down. You're seeing that
Hmm.
women's basketball now as big as
Yeah.
it's got now. The WNBA is really blown up. Whether you're an Angel Reese or a Caitlin Clark fan, it's good for the rivalry. It doesn't matter what
Exactly.
side. It's a Bird Johnson type, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird type
Hmm.
thing. So even if you love one of them and hate the other, you're paying attention to an extent, and it filters down. And the U.S. women's basketball team has always been gold medal
Right.
caliber, so that's helped exposure. But you're starting to see it in some other sports. One of the things we did at Memphis, and this again is back in 06, 07 when I went to school about doing some play-by-play on their streams. I also offered to and you've seen it. It's that little video show we do, the Wolf Chase Toyota Insider.
Yes.
I go,
Yes.
look, these Olympic sports are never going to have a radio show. They're never going to have a TV show. Can we get a video camera in there, interview these coaches for about 5 minutes each week, and at least it gives them some kind of
Sure.
outlet, some sort of exposure. And it's funny, if you go back, if you look at it now, and Cam Irwin is doing the shows now, and Brad Pope has produced those shows. But the first year we did it, we were in that big press conference room they used to have at the university. And
Uh-huh.
so just sitting at a table of two chairs. It's not dressed up at all. You can see our legs under the table. There's no tablecloth. The camera guys are all the way in the back of the room. So there's a screen here, and we're like here, a little bit
Right.
of the screen. And I even asked somebody, and they didn't have a video department back then. It was the football video people that had to do everything. Now we've got a video department. But I asked one of them one day, I go, is there any way we can pull the camera closer? And they go, no. And I'm like, all right, I'm not doing your job, so I'm not gonna fight it.
Yeah.
Where that's come to.
Especially in the past 10 years, like the whole evolution of digital media and everything has just really exploded. It's just, and there's so many opportunities for people out there and so many ways to do stuff. And
It's funny you mentioned that in YouTube, and that's just a platform. Anytime a game's on YouTube or something, it's not YouTube producing; it's a
right.
production company. But that's the platform, and that's the first place I really realized how big like the digital
Hmm.
platform can be. So I early in my broadcast years up to around when I was 40, I lived the broadcaster's lifestyle. I grew up watching like Harry Carey and all them. So again, just to be 100% transparent, I was
Sure.
having a blast. You're going on the road, you're watching the game. So you get into town, it's like, hey, let's go have a few beers, and then you can have some burgers and some wings, and you wake
Right.
up the next day and like, I gotta crush this breakfast buffet. And so I'm like 270 pounds. Well, my father died when I was 15, had a heart attack. He had type 2 diabetes, but I was getting toward 40. I was like, I got to cut this out because he died at 47. I go, I'm 7 years away, and that's not what I want. So I got into CrossFit, and
Right.
that's when CrossFit was still kind of underground, but it was starting to get a little bit of coverage. It's kind of mainstream now. And you talk about social media. I had made a connection with the CrossFit Games lead broadcaster, Sean Woodland.
Hmm.
Well, I'm in CrossFit for about a year. I'm losing weight. It's great. I feel good. I'm sitting at home one night, and on Twitter, it pops up from CrossFit. There's a workout called Fran in CrossFit, but the tweet said, if you've got broadcast experience and have a good Fran time, then we're looking for broadcasters. So immediately, I just I come into my home office. I'm
Right.
about to go watch Memphis basketball play Florida. It's before I was on the broadcast crew for basketball. Gonna go up to Huey's. Like, I'll go up to Huey's, have a beer, watch the game. But it popped up right before I walked out of the house. So I get on my computer, send them my demo and my resume, and then I put out a tweet because I knew Sean Woodland followed me.
Right.
And I go, wow, this is neat. I think I'm going to apply for this. Hope I get it. And he liked it, and that was great. So I'm up there, and we're not even at halftime of the Florida Memphis basketball game. I think they're playing at Madison Square Garden. And my email notification goes off. It's like, we've received your information. We would like you to send us. They sent me a link to a YouTube file, and they wanted me to call it from home
Right.
and then send them the MP3 back. And then, long story short, 2 days later, I get an email from CrossFit. It's like, we're going to put you on the broadcast crew, probably just regionals this year. But that began a 10-year relationship with CrossFit doing their games. And that got me my first ESPN work. So again, you talk about your social media. If I'd have
Hmm.
never made that connection with Sean, and look, I put that out there because I knew he would see it. I mean, you got to play the game.
Exactly. You
But
do. I preach that every
yeah,
day.
but he knew, at least he knew my resume and my demo
That's
was going to
right.
be on the
That's right.
way.
That's right. And speaking to that, it doesn't matter if you're in sports or something else. And I teach this a lot. You have to look for whatever opportunity. And I always talk about don't just send your resume in, connect with the person that may be hiring you or already know, like let them know that you are interested and you're doing this. Because otherwise it gets lost in a computer,
Yeah.
and a computer's job is to kick you out. That's
Oh
what
yeah.
it's, yeah. So I love that. And I think that everything that you have talked about just shows how you have to be the one to step up and take advantage of your opportunities, look for them in order to get more in a better career.
No, it's a highly competitive market. Like, it's
Right.
everyone wants to do it at first because it's fun. You get to go to ball games for a living, and do coaches shows. And my life right now as an independent contractor is I go to ball games and coaches
Right.
shows and press conferences. It's a blast. I stayed in it long enough. I know we'll talk about that later, but I stayed in it long enough. I
Right.
was able to make a career out of it.
You mentioned the CrossFit, and I have to say, I try to like every one of your CrossFit posts. I try to like, it's my little like, way to go, Jeff, way to go. But I love that, you share that on social media too. And hopefully it encourages people. And you talked about the heart attack. My mom died from a 20-year battle with heart disease. And I started working with the Heart Association back in 2000 here in Memphis. And I've continued for 25 years. And it's something, very personal. And I've been very conscious of, my health and my heart issues and things like that. Um, how would you how has that changed your life, by not just your career, obviously, but how has it changed your life and your perspective on health?
Uh, I'm more conscious. I mean, look, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not like super fit all the time. Getting my fitness back pretty well right now. Because when I was in the 47, 48, when I was in the CrossFit, I got into doing a lot of competitions. Now,
Right.
not at the level of the CrossFit Games, but I was doing a lot of local, a lot of regional
Right.
competitions, and I got like super fit back in those 2 years because I was aging up in the 45 plus division. So
Right.
I was going to be the young gun for a couple of years. So I was going to relive my midlife crisis thing and jump back into it. But it's you mentioned my dad, so he had type 2 diabetes. He wasn't like obese or anything. But I mean, he liked to drink. He was going to have his
Right.
beer. He was going to eat sugary foods.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, I mean, literally, that's a death sentence. I
It
mean,
is.
I was very fortunate. The last day he was alive, we came home, showed no signs of, that was going to happen that night. But one of the last things we ever got to do was throw ball out in the backyard. But then
Oh,
an hour later, I hear him, struggling to breathe. And within an hour after that, they come into the hospital and tell us they couldn't do anything for him.
right.
So I was really conscious of that again as I got close to 40, that he died at 47. His father, who I never knew, died at 47. So I always had that 47 in the
Yeah.
back of my mind.
Yeah.
So when I got to 47, I joked about it with my friends. I was like, hey, this could be the last year. So soak it all in. But once I made it to 48 and I'm 52 now, I'll be 53 in August. I kind of look at it as I'm living on bonus time now. So you just got
Right.
to make the most of it. But the CrossFit stuff, it was great. It gives you something to do during the day. It reignited, maybe some competitive nature. It's cliche as it sounds because I got into coaching at CrossFit. I had such a positive experience with it. I wanted to get in coaching. So I coached at one of the local gyms for about 5 years. And I see it more in the people I coached than I did myself. And it probably was myself too, but as you see people, whether they need to lose weight or they're already fit and they come in and they do things they never thought they could do and they stick with it, that confidence really
Yes,
does translate out
it
into
does.
the outside world and everything you do.
It absolutely does. I wanted to go back just, and I'm going to do a PSA out there for people. My mom had an emergency triple bypass, and uh, after the surgery, she became insulin dependent. And I did not know, obviously, she'd had prediabetes or something like that. My grandmother had too. But what I learned along the way was that diabetes and heart disease kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so many people struggle with that. And so that's my PSA out there. Heart disease, and I won't go into all of that, but you can take measures to change your health.
Yeah.
You can keep from becoming a statistic. And I love that you have, taken that and just changed your life and changed other people's lives by doing what you do. And I think that's wonderful. I
Yeah,
do.
I appreciate it. I was just trying to work out, lose some weight, and stay
That's
fit.
okay. That's okay. Okay, so let's talk about, when you when what's something you miss about the old school way of broadcasting, like before social
Hmm.
media?
Well, I mean, it's probably I could tell people my first job ever when I was 15. Uh, Renee Wilson, now Renee Little, she was at my church, still very good friends with her today, got me my first job at the Dairy Queen. And
I remember
so
Dairy Queen. Yeah.
so Dairy Queen Mall of Memphis. And for the 2 years I worked there, and you get ice cream all over you, and then I'm back there cooking, you got grease and everything. And at the time, it was like this ain't it. It's 3.35 an hour back in the day in 1987 or 88 when I started working. But it's one of those things I would not trade that experience for anything, but I wouldn't go do it again. So
I understand that.
when you start broadcasting back then, of course, without the internet, all the equipment is on phone line,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of equipment, and so you're dragging boxes and boxes of stuff to do anything. Now you just get a little bitty mixer, and you can plug
Right.
everything in through the Ethernet or get wireless, and it makes it easy. I don't really miss carrying all that stuff,
No.
but what it's done for me now is that, I worked as the engineer. I did Dan O'Brien's old job before I
Hmm.
moved over. Is that it gives you an appreciation for what the people behind the scenes do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
look, I mean, you've been around it enough now, whether it's Memphis or some other broadcasters or people, there's those broadcasters that come in, they're the headsets on,
Yes.
when the show's over, the headsets go down, they're out of there.
Hmm.
I think, and I don't miss putting all that stuff together, but it gives me an appreciation for what the people
Sure.
do behind the scenes. That's why a lot of people have asked me sometime after Penny's show or Ryan's show, like, what do you do? And you don't have to do all that. And I'm helping tear down. It's like, I can't, I did that
Yeah.
job. And I
Right.
know not that it's a bad feeling, but you work with some people that just walk out off. It's like, I can't,
Yeah.
I mean, those people have been there for 2 or 3 hours before the show to get ready. I'm not just
Hmm.
going to walk out and big time them.
No, no, I agree with that. Absolutely. Do that. So I can't remember the name. So there's a current movie out. It's about the 1972 Olympics.
I saw it.
The
Yeah.
mu- so I watched. I love it because it's about the Israeli athletes being killed during, the Olympic Games, but it's from the broadcasting perspective, and I loved that, seeing that.
Well, more importantly, it was from the sports broadcasting
Yes.
because there was a fight between uh was it ABC? I think, yeah, because with Jim McKay was
Yeah.
it there was that famous Jim McKay clip.
Right.
They're all gone. That's the
Yes.
famous clip of that whole thing. And if you've not seen the movie, you should see it.
Yes.
The sports broadcasters fought with the news department, and the news department, which was overseas and
Mhm.
in New York, they weren't there in Munich at first. I don't think it's hard to. Again, you didn't have the internet back then. So
Right.
you're just relying on some phone calls from the sports department in Munich that there's gunshots, something's going on. You
Right.
really don't know the gravity of the situation. And then when they realize the gravity of the situation, news wanted to take over in the
Yeah.
Arn Rulage. And if you Google him, I mean, he's the guy that started Monday Night Football, Olympic coverage. I mean, he's a pioneer, fought. You saw it in the movie that no, it's our story.
Yeah.
We're here. We're
Right.
going to tell the story. And it's not like the old cliche, they're just the old broadcaster, the goofy cliches, the sports broadcaster that, we're journalists to an extent too. Even when we tell our sports stories, there's
Sure.
got to vet our sources and tell the story and make sure we get it right. Same thing translates over to news, and that even moves on to the '89 World Series between the A's and the Giants when they had the earthquake right before Game 3.
Right.
They kept it there, and the sports department
Right.
did a lot of that 24-hour coverage until the news department could get in there and do it. But yeah, that's a great movie.
It is a great movie. And I was trying to get my sister to watch it, and she's like, I don't want to watch people being killed. I'm like, you don't even like, that's not even like part of the story.
Yeah.
But it, like moving those big cameras out there, like
Oh
it
yeah.
was just fascinating to me.
Well, yeah, because now you can just take an iPhone and go, I'll
Yeah,
shoot you while I'm out here. So it's yeah, those big heavy cameras back in the day.
I know. I was great. Okay. So, in your opinion, like what makes a great broadcaster?
Oh man.
I ask the tough
But
questions.
no, I think you just got to be entertaining. I mean, if you're listening to the game on the radio or watching the game on TV, you're just wanting to hear the story. Like I
Hmm.
said, it's just have fun, take the job seriously, don't take yourself seriously. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just I don't know what makes a great broadcaster. I just like when people come up to me and go, I don't know how you do that play by play. You see this and you know all this. And I just I think we all are blessed with gifts, and maybe that was
Sure.
just mine. I
Exactly.
just tell people, I go,
Right.
I just say what I see.
Yeah.
Whether I'm sitting courtside or in a press box, I just say what I see and try to entertain myself. I like it. I don't like the old school where I had to be in a press box with a bunch of other people
Hmm.
because I don't know if I hear someone laughing at the other end. If I've said something stupid, I'd look down and go, because you're talking so much, like what I just say. Uh, I like it. Maybe if I have just one person in the booth with me, like if I'm calling baseball or SIDs in there, or if I know specifically someone's listening. It's funny. One year I was calling, one of the years I was calling Tiger baseball. Tony Gibbs, who was a big Tiger fan,
Hmm.
came up to me after the game. He was like, my favorite part of listening to the broadcast is when you make yourself laugh. And I go, well, when you sat in the booth talking to yourself alone, as long as I have, then you got to find a way to entertain yourself.
No, exactly. I do that all the time. I make myself laugh. But I think that's a good thing, because it's interesting when you see what you see and you tell people about it. I remember when I went on like a 6-week road trip, just me and my dog, and I took my camera, and I guess I was having a midlife crisis too. But I started posting pictures, and I love history. I started posting pictures of what I saw. And then all the people I grew up with were like, oh my God, I love this because I was giving them my perspective.
Right.
And I kind of took that into photography about, this is how I see people. And I'm just going to photograph people how I see it. And I think that when people just kind of relax and just are more authentic, and yes, you kind of have to have a gift, I think, for it. I don't, I've heard broadcasters that should not be broadcasting at all. Okay. If you can't pronounce somebody's name over and over and over
Right.
again, then there's an issue. Like you don't care about that. And so I think we relate better to people that are more caring and more personable
Right.
in the job.
Right. And I think it's a matter of, just don't come off as if you're smarter than the
Yeah.
person listening. I always tell people, I go, look, man, I'm not a wine and cheese broadcaster type of guy. I'm just, beer and hot wings. That's who I am. I'm just the guy there. I could be sitting in the stands next to you. I'm not trying to show you how much smarter or how much more I know than you are or how much better I've got it. I'm just fortunate to be there and be at those games.
So I think we've kind of talked about this, but how have you adjusted your style over the years in terms of the sport itself, but also in terms of the coverage, like going from, radio to digital and streaming and in person? Like, how have you kind of adjusted your style and approach?
Well, I started out at radio, and I think that's a good spot to start out, especially play by play, because you don't have anything to fall back on. It's just what you're saying is it.
Right.
Yeah, and you got to fill that time. Uh, and I got so many reps. So going back to after I got done with the River Kings, moved up to a little town in North Missouri, Moberly, Missouri, worked for the Shepherd Radio Group, I didn't know it at the time, but I learned when I went up there. Well, this group's kind of pioneers at small market radio. So we had a big 100,000 watt station, covered 24 counties. So they would do, they might do, Putnam County one night, Moberly the next night, Macon one night. So I just got a ton of reps, which helped me. But one of their things was the first night I did a football game, this team was blowing out another one. And so I'm just saying, I'm not trying to knock anybody, but I'm saying, man, you would think they would just run the ball and run the clock out. They're up 35 points. I get back to the studio the next day, and the program director comes in and is like, "Hey, I know what you were saying, but we're selling advertising for both teams, so
Right.
don't interject your opinion too much. Just call the game." Now, maybe a coach is running it up on somebody, but that's not our business because we got to go sell that school again later in the year.
Right.
And I got in the habit for 3 years. Just call the game. No one wants to hear my BS or my opinion on what they should or should not do.
Right.
Just roll with it. Because look, I've called games in my career that come down to the wire, and I have called basketball games that have been like 80 something to 4 in high school. And you still got to try to make it sound for the good for the team
Sure.
scored 4 points. They may be good in a few years. And again, their parents, usually in those small towns, own the businesses and they're buying the advertising. So I got started out on a really good foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell that to the young broadcasters now. It's like, and you're in college, you're just getting started. No one wants your hot take.
Right.
Just call the game. I mean, that'll come with experience. That'll come with getting reps. But I think I've stayed kind of that foundational element.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I call, and I'll talk about Tiger baseball because I've been with them for 22 seasons, and I know,
That's crazy.
yeah, I know the team really well. I know the coaches really well, and I can interject a little bit more opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell the story. But I still will not criticize a player at
Yeah.
all. Look, if some kid's struggling at the plate or on the mound, I've got to tell the story. But you can do it without
Sure you can.
dogging on the athlete.
Right. Because, especially in the age of social media, like that then transfers everybody else's opinion based on what you said.
Well, I mean, when I called women's basketball here for 17 years, and let me just be frank, I called the two worst seasons in program history. We were 3-25 one year, 4-27 the next year, 2-30 in conference play, and those games weren't close. It wasn't like we were a player or two away from turning the
Right.
corner. But I called the games, I told the story, And I know someone one time on the message board it said he does a good job because he doesn't berate the team.
Right.
He doesn't dog on the team or down the team while being able to translate that story. I think that's where you become a good broadcaster if you're with a team and they're struggling.
Sure.
It's easy, man. If you're going to the NCAA's and winning conference championships, it's all good. But grind through some long seasons. In fact, in that streak, I remember we were 3-25 in women's basketball. Coach Schoenrock came in his first year of baseball. We knew it was going to be bad. They were 13-42 that year. And then I followed with another 4-27 women's basketball season.
Right.
So I saw a total of 20 wins and well over 100 losses there within just over a calendar year. So that'll force you to to develop your skill.
Sure. And but I think that's also the best compliment when somebody says and recognizes that you are being fair to everybody and not knocking anybody down and still telling the stories and doing that. What has been like the best game you've ever called, if you can pick one?
It's probably going to be 2007 NCAA no, and in the regionals it was the conference tournament. So we knew in '07 it was Tiger baseball.
Right.
So Coach Schoenrock comes in '05. Rough year, and we knew it would be. We made a huge jump. We went from 13 to 32 wins in 2006. And we thought, okay, '07 is going to be the year we get to the regionals this year. So we're doing well, but we're a bubble team going to the conference tournament. And this is when Rice was still an elite national, ranked number 2 in the country. We play at Rice, lose 3 games at the end of the season, the series down there, and then we go to the conference tournament in Greenville. We're in the same bracket, and we played them 3 more times that week. Well, we get to the semifinals, and it's double elimination. We've already lost 1 game, and so we're playing Saturday morning, not the 9 a.m. tournament game. So ECU, I think, is the number 2 seed, and it's their home ballpark out at Clark LeClaire. So we had to win that game to still have a chance to make a regional, to get an at-large bid. And we lost to them 4 times already. We're coming to that game and ended up winning it 2-1. And the neat thing about that game is it starts at 9 a.m. and it's the Memphis parents and the Rice parents, which you expect 9 a.m. game. So East Carolina's playing game number 2 at noon. So about 10:30, the crowd starts rolling in. And by the time we get to the last 3 innings, it's standing room only at that ballpark.
Wow.
And so as the underdogs, everyone's cheering for Memphis because Rice is number 2. They're the big dog. Everyone wants to knock it. So everyone in the stadium's cheering for Memphis. And of course, we get down bottom of the ninth. They get a runner on. It's 2-1. I think Matt Yoakley I think he went to Collierville, comes in, strikes it out, and I just go ballistic. And because you just kind of knew that might put us into the NCAA this year, and everything built around it. And we had built a pretty good following because we were winning that year. And that was probably the most fun. It was such a neat one because I thought, all right, this is a pretty big game. I was fortunate enough to be able to call. I still have the game, still have the highlight from it at the end of the game. So it was that was probably the neatest game. And then I don't know if it's from a career standpoint, but maybe the first time I called I started the CrossFit Games in 2014 in the regionals, but I got called to California for the next year. And that was the first year I was on an ESPN platform.
How exciting.
Somebody from the gym took a screenshot.
Aw.
It's the lower third. I wasn't on camera, just the lower little graphic for like announcers, Jeff Brightwell. I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I've made it.
So I hope that the screenshot of you was really good.
Well, no, this one didn't even have me on it. Graphic. They had the action, but they're like, here's who's talking. Here's who you're hearing. But even just seeing that little graphic was neat. Okay,
so back 2 years ago, we played at Tulane, and it was New Year's Day. And me and a couple of other women, we decided to fly to New Orleans for New Year's Eve, right? Donna and Sonia.
Yeah.
So we fly there, and we're at the game the next day, and we're not doing well. It's an ESPN broadcast. And we're like, Sonia has all of her Memphis stuff on. So the camera crew was like on her. We got screenshots sent to us with the most awful looks on our face.
Yeah.
It was horrible. And so then we're like trying to smile, while we're losing. It was great. So that was my claim to fame,
It's
ESPN.
funny you talk about like the screenshots and people. It's funny now doing a lot of TV work now, and even in the gym, I'm very camera aware.
Yeah,
It's weird.
it
Like
is.
if I'm at an event and I see a camera, a video camera, or just a regular camera come out, I know, especially in the gym.
Hmm.
As vain as that sounds, like, well, I need to put a look on my face, like I'm really grunting, I'm really suck it
Right.
in, and really like I'm really trying. And then even that, whether it's a ball game or press conference or a gathering, you know,
Hmm.
if the camera's there, just be
Be
aware.
aware. Be aware. Absolutely. Okay, so let's go and take the opposite of the best game. Was there ever a game that you call which went totally off the rail? And did you recover or
I mean, just those first two games, the student game I called the Southern Miss football
yeah.
game, and then that game down in Macon for the hockey team. That was just a disaster. I mean, technically everything went fine, but just I was just overwhelmed as you would be in your
Sure.
first broadcast. There are little high school games where you have equipment trouble because back then I said again you're using phone lines, and in the
Mhm.
small towns there may be 5 or 6 radio stations doing the same game.
Right.
We were at I think North Shelley High School one time, and that's when you were the very early parts of being able to broadcast using a cell phone. And we were having trouble getting a cell signal. We didn't have a phone line. Well, they got me a little school desk, like high school desk,
Right,
edge
right, right,
into.
right.
I'm in the corner of the gym with the cell phone in a bag, hooked into the mixer. I've got the antenna you take off, and I'm holding it above my head to get a signal the whole game. So it's all goofy things like that.
Hey, you got to make it work. Like, do what you have to make it work.
Well, that was that first station, the Shepherd Group up in Moberly. They told us like get on the air any way you can. If the
Right.
phone line doesn't work, get a cell signal. Find a way. If you got to get just a telephone and do it, just find a way to get the game on the air.
Sure. So now let's talk about who are the voices that kind of inspired you in the past.
So at my age, the first voice I remember, and I don't remember specific games because I was so young back then, but I remember Jack Eaton. I mean, when I was young, I remember the Great Scott, Great Caesar's Ghost, and how he would just so emotional. It was so fun to listen to. I don't think you could probably do a broadcast the way he did it now and keep your job. I mean, what was the famous line? And this is in the middle of the Cold War. I mean, this is like dead serious stuff when
Oh,
he goes, I would root for Russia before I rooted for, I think it was Louisville. He's like, I'd rather root for
oh
Russia.
my
And you got
God.
to remember, I mean, I know we've got our dealings with Russia now, but
Right.
back then, the Cold War,
That yes,
that was some, that was some
absolutely.
pretty serious stuff to say. But I mean, you loved it. You knew what he was saying back then. So that's the first voice I remember. Of course, he's iconic in Memphis, but I grew up maybe one of the most influential broadcasters. And I worked with him a little bit when I did PA for the Redbirds was Tom Stocker. He did the Memphis Chicks games. And so that's what I would grow up on listening to here in Memphis. My growing up in the 80s, the broadcaster I remember with the Tigers was Paul Hartledge. I
Right.
like Paul Hartledge. He was doing the game, so listen to him a lot. And then the summers, back in the 80s, Gen X kids, their parents were at work, so you were at home
Right.
entertain yourself, or if you got some friends in the neighborhood, well, of course, you had cable back then in WGN, and that's back before the Cubs had lights. So they played all day games at home. So
Mhm.
I grew up a lot on Harry Carey.
Yeah.
That's probably where I picked up that broadcaster lifestyle early on. So I got my fitness, and nutrition a little bit on track. But those are the three probably that I remember. Probably Stalker locally is the guy I remember just calling Memphis Chicks
Mhm.
games, and then moved into the Redbirds when they came here.
So let's talk Memphis basketball now. You host the Penny Hardaway Show,
Mhm.
and how long have you been hosting with just Penny?
From his very first
Oh,
year, the year
so
I took that
five.
show out, seven seasons
Yeah,
now. Is that
yeah,
right?
I
Yeah,
think so. I've kind of lost count, but yeah. So he was hired in what 2019, I think,
yeah.
2018.
The year before, I think, and I think
Yeah.
this is the end of his seventh year. But I've done every year of his coach's show.
So had you covered him when he played at Memphis State?
No, but he when I was a freshman, it was my freshman and sophomore years were the 2 years that he had played. Remember, he
Right.
had he had to sit out his freshman year, and that was my
Right.
last year at Harding. When I came in, in 91, 92 was the Elite Eight year. Then the next year was his
Yeah.
final season. I started calling the student radio during the Lorenzen Wright years,
Right.
which was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So how did you develop that relationship with him doing the radio show?
I mean, you meet with the coaches before the season, and as far as I go, since I had never covered them, I mean, you tell the coach, you just got to do it a bunch. They got to develop a trust in you. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the big thing when you do coaches shows, whether it's Penny or Coach Silverfield or anyone else. I mean, you can tell them, and I tell them like, look, I'm not part of the general media
Right.
in the middle. I mean, I'm media obviously, but I'm Memphis, University of Memphis
Right.
media. I'm here to, advocate for you. So we'll build the trust. I go, if there's something serious, we'll talk about it off air and see how we need to address it. But I'm never going to question you or put you on the spot in a show
Right.
or an interview. And that gets some fans. Like I get some nasty social media and
Oh.
emails sometime about you won't you don't have any guts or however you want to phrase that because you won't ask the coach A, B, or C. And a lot of times I will ask the coach that, but I don't phrase it quite like they want me to.
Exactly.
I'm not going to go, why are you such an idiot? And why won't you do this or that? And maybe I'll just go, why did you make this
Right.
decision?
Right.
And you build that trust over the years that, something serious happens, they know
Right.
they're going to come out to, Brookhaven Pub. And again, whether
Hmm.
it's Ryan or Penny, and they know, like, I'm not here. The job, and even I have some broadcasters that disagree with this, but I heard a college broadcaster say this, and I tell the ADs anytime I get a new AD, and I've even told Ed Scott, I've told every coach, my job, like you can find a good broadcaster. I mean, it's a
Right.
subjective field. Some people are going to like the way I call games. Some people are not going to like it. It is what it is. But I tell them my job is to, when things are going their absolute worst, is to put our best foot forward for the university.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
and that doesn't mean like, be Pollyanna and make sure everything's going all right, but
Right.
I'm there to get their message out
Hmm.
and is to present the University of Memphis and the athletic department in the best light possible.
Right.
Right?
And
Whether you disagree with it or not, that is my job.
well, exactly. And it's easy for people to send you emails or write on social media and get all their frustration out, but it's also you're a professional, it's a job, and you're not there to tear down the university or the coach.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you
Yeah.
can tell the story. You can tell the story if things aren't going well, again, without being
Right.
derogatory. But I mean, here's the thing about social media, and some people don't like it. So, I keep a really small group of friends. I mean, I
Mhm.
like people and everything, but everyone's got their inner circle.
Right.
But my friends laugh at me, and sometimes like, I wish we would do like you sometime. And I don't know, maybe I'm mean in a way, but if there's someone like I don't like, I'm not going to go. If my group of friends are hanging out with somebody, I'm not going. I don't want to be around someone like
I'm
that.
like that too.
It translates on the social media. I don't mind blocking somebody or muting them on social media because if I don't want to hear what you say in person, I don't care what you have to say on social media either. So use that. And as much as a broadcaster, and maybe this is just me speaking, I don't want to speak for all of them. As much as you can tell somebody, a broadcaster, well, just let it roll off your back and, don't pay attention to that. No one
Hard.
wants to hear negative stuff about
No.
themselves. So flush it out. Like I said, I don't care if you're a broadcaster or whatever profession, even with what you do, your photography, your podcast, if you've done a good job or not.
Right. Um, and you have talking about Penny's show, you've had to sit in there and talk to him after some very bad
Yeah.
losses.
Let's face it. And I love Penny. I think he's done a good job, but it's been a roller coaster ride with Penny.
It
He had to learn the
has.
job, and he took that job in a very strange time because he took it right when the portal started, right when NIL,
Right.
then COVID hit his second year, and like, hey, he had those great recruiting classes, and some of them didn't work out, and they had whether it was winning or losing or internal issues. Yeah, and a lot of times we'll just talk about it at the, it used to be where he would have the guests come out first. So we have a
Yes.
chance to talk during the break. I like it now that he comes out first. But if there's something serious, like something off the court, we'll talk about it at break. And I'll just be like, how do you want to address this?
Right.
Now, where he's gotten a lot better, uh, and I love him for it. And I'm sure, with the new administration, especially having Tim Duncan around,
Yes.
probably helped him a lot as far as Penny was so transparent. He was too transparent when he first started. Because I remember doing some of the coaches shows, and
Yes.
I would try to like soften the blow a little bit. Maybe this player's not in the locker room this week, and he would just come out and like, oh yeah, no one likes each other. And it's like, well, I wasn't trying to get you to say that, but he would be totally transparent. Now he'll pull back a little bit, which is good
Right.
for them. You don't. It's good for people to know behind the scenes a little bit, but in any aspect, whether it's sports or something else, you don't need to pull the curtain back
No.
completely for
No. No, you don't.
everyone to see.
I do want to give a shout out to Tim Duncan because since he's been hired, and it's not to take away anything from Ed Scott, but Tim obviously played, in Memphis and is a really good friend of Penny's. But I've also noticed a change in how Penny is marketed or how he comes out and does stuff now. And one
Yeah.
of those was moving him to the front of the show. And I like that fact because it's his, because I was the very first night as I noticed that and I was like, Tim, why is he coming out first? And he's like, it's his show. He should
Yeah.
come out first.
Well, and I want to word this right because I don't want to put anybody on the spot,
No.
but you know, Penny is an iconic figure in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it was Penny or Tubby or Josh or any other basketball coach in Memphis has always held that iconic position.
Right.
And I think in a lot of aspects, maybe people, powers in charge, would stay away from them a little bit. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
let's face it, they kind of ran
Right.
autonomously a little bit. And I don't think anyone really made a concerted hardline effort to go, it's your show.
Right.
You need to start it out because the first year he started it out himself, and then it switched to where you let the whatever guests, mostly a lot of
Right.
players are coaches, and I don't think he ever did this maliciously because look, we Penny because you've worked with the
Right.
rebounders, and I know him a little bit now. He's just kind of a go with the flow guy.
He is. He is.
So you may show up at 7:10, you may show up at 7:30, and then sometimes back up. And I know he wasn't doing it to be like I'm not going to the show.
Right.
Probably over at the Laurie Walton Center, loses track of time.
Exactly.
And it's great to know the players, but a lot of them, some of them are great and they can go 30 minutes and it's awesome. Some of them are new and they don't talk a lot and
Right.
just, I understand they're uncomfortable. They're talking in front of a group of people and they're not used to
Sure.
doing that, some of them. So it was like, man, I'm having to stretch this out. And now I'm starting to just re-ask questions in different
Right.
ways to kind of keep
Right.
it going. It helped. I think it's great having him go first because then when you get the guest and we
It's
try to
shorter.
get them on, we get them on last now. Like for Silverfield show, he'll go first. We'll get the guests in the middle and then bring Ryan back at the end. But whether it's that format or having the players on the back end,
Right.
I can condense it. And I'd rather leave the show thinking, oh, I could have got 10 more minutes out of that player
Exactly.
than trying to just grind through a 30-minute interview because you can always have the players come back
Sure.
and expand an interview a little bit if they had something really good to talk about. But I think Tim probably that was one of the things. Even Ed Scott asked me about at the Hall of Fame banquet. He goes, "How's the coaches show going this year with Penny going first?" I go,
Right.
"It's great." I go,
Yeah.
it's great." And I try not to stretch them out too long. I usually get Penny for about 40 minutes because I know then I can get the players for about 10
Sure.
minutes, a couple quick 5-6 minute segments. Works out pretty well.
So my question that we were kind of talking about before we started the recording was, how do you plan out or prep for each show?
So I just have a general outline because I don't want to be too specific again where we're just doing a show talking about stats and stuff.
Right.
I mean, when I first started, that's the way it was. And it was easier to do with football because, there's not 160 points scored in a football game. And I would just
Mhm.
go through each score. And that was great, but it was kind of boring. I'll admit it's kind of boring and monotonous. But then I got to know Coach Silverfield a lot more. Same thing with Penny. We just go through the game. And so I will get, we've got 4 breaks, 5 segments. So the
Mhm.
first segment is just kind of a welcome. How's it going this week? Coming off whatever we did
Right.
that weekend. Second segment is kind of the review segment. We kind of get into the games. His third segment are the features and looking at what we have kind of coming ahead. And even on the feature segments, where we go behind the scenes or whatnot, a lot of times until we start the show, I might have a couple of notes on what I may ask, but you just don't ever know what they're going to bring up in the show. And that becomes a great feature segment. Then you get the player or two or the coach or two at the end. I mean, one of the best things, one of my favorite segments this year was with Mike Davis, our assistant coach. Now, he's been
Right.
head coach. I mean, he coached in a national title game at Indiana. He was our big rival at UAB. It's when he came on the show this year, and I just asked him the general question. I asked any coach or player, what was it about Memphis?
Right.
Why'd you come here? Especially Mike Davis. He could have retired. And when he brought up that he was down in Texas and him and his wife were going to start a food truck business,
Oh my
I
God.
just kind of was like, this is great. I mean, immediately like, we're done talking basketball. I want to hear about this food truck business.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I thought that was neat that he was like, I was done with coaching. Me and my wife are going to open up some food trucks down here and I think in the Dallas Fort Worth area. So
Right.
then we got to talk about how'd you get into that? Are you going to be in the food truck? What
Right.
are you cooking? Things like that. So a lot of times you just don't ever know what little nugget you're going to get within the show and you can run with it.
Well, and in the last segment I did with Nate Brown, he's the director of development for Memphis. He got into the food thing too. He talked about when he grew up in North Texas and he went to school in Louisiana, and he talked about the big difference in the food. And now he's like this huge foodie, and he has this list of places all over the country that he's either eaten at or wants to eat at. And so we just started like 15 minutes talking about food, in New
We just
Orleans food.
It's so funny because as soon as he said that, I was just thinking, how strange, man. Right? This guy coached and he was the head coach in a national championship game. Great run at UAB, and I
Right.
just can't picture him. And it was going to be sliders in his food truck. It was like,
I love that.
oh,
I'd been in there. I'd been.
yeah. But I was like, man, most of the customers won't even know that guy flipping that burger back there coach for a national championship. How strange is that? That's so odd. Where people, whatever career they're in, they still have other interests.
Okay, so quick, out of all the times that you've interviewed Penny, has there been one time when it was just like the funniest thing ever?
Oh, I don't know. He's kind of got I mean, I'm kind of a dry sense of humor.
He
He'll put stuff in
does.
there, and sometimes I'm like, am I supposed to laugh at this or
I
not?
know, right? Right.
Kind of gauge what the crowd does, especially y'all's front table. It's like, all right, that was meant to be funny or whatever. But no, I mean, he just doesn't come out with like the obvious joke. He's just kind of
He
really,
doesn't.
but he makes it easy on me. He's a great interview, laid back guy. He'll talk about whatever we need to talk about, whether things are going
Right.
good or things are struggling. I'm fortunate and it's not that I'm a good interview. I'm really lucky to have Penny and Ryan, who I think
Sure.
trust me. Uh, they know I'm not going to throw them under the bus. They know if there's something that doesn't need to be out in public, I'm not going to be mentioning it out of the
Exactly.
coach's show. So it's if you're hosting a coach's show, having someone good to work with, that's the key.
And those are two great ones.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right there. So, do you have a bucket list of people that you want to interview?
No, I mean, I don't think about it. I mean, I'm fortunate, and I know this is going to sound cliche, and just because I'm at Memphis, but I mean, I'm where I want to be. I've had some
Sure.
chances early when I moved back to Memphis to go to after my first year at Memphis, the guy at Learfield uh, that is in charge of all the broadcasters called me, and there was a P5 job open,
Right.
but it was just like I'm home. I growing up in the '80s, I was like any other Gen Xer in Memphis. And it's
Hmm.
probably not just Memphis, it's any hometown. I want to
Sure.
get away. There's nothing to do in Memphis. I'm getting out, I'm never coming back. And so moved up to Missouri, and that first week, of course, it was culture shock to me. Everyone talks about people coming from small towns to big cities.
Right.
You go from a city to a small town in Moberly, Missouri, and I moved
Yeah.
up there on a Sunday.
Oh my
And
God.
it is still like every other small town. The only thing open was the Super Walmart.
Yes.
So their utilities, not utilities, but their TV and everything came out of Columbia,
Hmm.
Missouri. So I didn't have cable TV for a week. I'm just up in the electronics department at Walmart watching TV. And if people would come up, can I help you? I was like, I'm just watching TV and just looking around. But thanks. And so again, going back to the point, it's like I just want to move out. So I moved out for 7 years, lived in Cape Girardeau for 3 years after that. But from the moment I moved out of town, I knew I wanted to come back home, and was incredibly lucky to know the old program director at WMR, Malvin Massey, who's passed away since then. The year before I moved back to Memphis, they were Mark McClellan, who was calling the games, longtime broadcaster in Memphis. He had
His son, he has a son, right?
Preston, yeah, Preston
Yes. Okay.
McClellan.
I follow Mark on
Okay,
Instagram and
yeah.
his dog.
Well, my relationship started with Mark when I worked at WREC as a part timer, and he hosted the afternoon,
Right.
maybe the midday talk show back then. But anyway, he was doing the women's games in baseball, and he was going to step down. So I mean, he just had other stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I called the university the year before, and they're like, "Look, it's a contract job. It's not a full-time job." And it's like, "Okay, yeah, I know." But the Mark ended up doing it one more year. And that's when I called Malvin. I go, Malvin, what's going on? I thought Mark was stepping down. He's like, he's doing it one more year, but he's out after next year. He's at,
Right.
he's got life. So I got back on the phone. I called Bob Wynn, reached out to Jennifer Rodriguez and Bob Wynn. I think you'll like this story. I would not leave them alone. And they said, hey, it's a contract job. If you want to come home, if you want to move down here, we can't promise you anything but these games.
Right.
Maybe we can get you in contact with the radio station. I'm like, that's fine. And a big reason I wanted to move home is because my mom had just retired at that point. I mean, she wasn't old at that point, but she was in her early mid-60s, and since it was just her and my dad had died, it's like
Right.
I don't want to be out of town when the inevitable happens.
Yes.
But I emailed Bob Wynn once a week and Jennifer once a week, every week for 3 months.
I
And
love that. I love that.
they had basically indicated, oh, it's probably going to be your job. But,
Right.
and it wouldn't be, I want the job. I'm great for it. I really am. I would just email them and go, hey, saw where the Tigers won this week. It's great. All tough loss. Just checking in. So Bob calls me one day. He's like, hey, whenever you can come down and meet with us in person, and I'm in Cape Girardeau, so I speed, so it's only a 2.5 hour drive. I get off work at like 10 o'clock that morning, and I hammer. I get down here about 1 o'clock to meet with Jennifer and Bob. Yeah, and Bob, and I will always appreciate this. He'd probably laugh at the story now, but I'll never forget what he told me. And he lied to me in a good way, because Bob always wanted to, I think, make you feel like you were an incredibly important person. So I sit down with Bob and Jennifer, and I don't know if you ever knew Bob really well, but he's kind of got that country. He's like, well, Jeff, I'll tell you what. We try to take care of our alumni here. And boy, when I saw your stuff, in my office, I have got a stack of resumes, but yours is on top. And I knew darn well that job had not been posted, that I was the only resume
Right.
on his desk at that point. But I appreciated that he wanted to make me feel like, okay, pretty important, or the priority. And then got that email from him, and I guess August later that year is like, hey, Bill Lofton says the contract is ready. We've been able to. You got to wait to get through the state and all
Right.
that for the budgets. He's like, we got a contract ready when you're ready to sign it. And of course, I left that day. But I mean, because I did the morning shift up in Cape Girardeau, the news. I'm off work at 10 or 11. I was down there by like 3 o'clock. If I could sign it, go see mom, come back that night.
I love that. I mean, and you're right. That goes back to, it's not that you were harassing them every week, but I do believe that when you show an effort,
Yeah.
like when you show you're interested, it tells people that you're going to also put that much energy into
Right.
doing the job.
And going back to your original question about, where I wanted to be, or where I want to be. Of course, I mean, when you're a kid, you're like, I want to do the Cubs games or whatever.
Right.
That's such a, obviously, if you get a major league job, you go to it. But I mean, I just like being back home. And it always sounds hokey. And I've had some people, when I worked for the news talk station here for a little bit, I had some people say it, because I mean, you can get on and talk about all the issues we have in the city. Obviously, there's crime, and there's still divisiveness within the city, and there's still economic hierarchy, and we know the challenges we have. But I absolutely love my hometown. For any flaws it has, I like that it's always called it. I go, we're a gritty, dirty old River
Right.
City, blue collar. What did I say? Because you see, I'm not going to mention the other city in the state that everyone loves now, but like we're not Bed Bath and Beyond down here.
Right. Right.
We're not cookie cutter. We got a real heart. It's not always the prettiest thing to look at, but it is what we are. And I mean, I love being a Memphian. I live here where I'm sitting now. South Campus is across the street. The
Right.
athletic department is a 5 minute walk away. I love my home.
I agree with you on that. When I moved to Houston in 2005, 2004, and as much as I loved Houston, there's so much to do there. I never felt a connection to the city. It was just too big. And I have to admit, Penny was actually part of the reason I moved back in a way because I miss sports. Not that Houston didn't have it, but nobody liked sports that I
Right.
was around. And I missed the character of the city. Now, I didn't grow up in Memphis. I grew up north of Jackson and McKenzie, but it's my home and I just missed everything about it.
But it's funny for the kind of I don't know if it's the reputation or the image like some people have of Memphis. But I will get very angry. I mean, if I go out of town and someone starts dogging on me,
Yes.
I take it
Yes.
incredibly personal. And one thing I take very personal too, uh, is when you talk to somebody, and I guess it's just because they don't take responsibility for their own,
Mhm.
what's going on with
Right.
them. And they
Right.
like to say, well, if I didn't live in Memphis, or if Memphis this, or it's all,
Right.
that city is not whole. You can be anything,
That's right.
everything you want to be in Memphis. That is up to you.
Hmm.
Uh, your success or your failure is not dictated. And if you don't like it, and you hear people, oh, I can't move. Yeah, you can.
Yes, you
Sell
can.
your house, cut your lease, pack up, and move where you think you're going to be a
Right.
success. You can accomplish anything you want in life in
Hmm.
Memphis.
Yes, you absolutely can. Okay, so we're getting to the end. Where can people find you on social media?
On Twitter and Instagram at Jeff A. Brightwell. LinkedIn, just Jeff Brightwell. My YouTube page, and that's just my demos and stuff. And if you're bored and want to watch my demo reels, they're on Jeff Brightwell on YouTube. I'm Jeff Brightwell on Facebook, but that's just for CrossFit. I never had a
Yeah.
Facebook, but I knew CrossFit was big into that, so I needed to
Hmm.
start that social aspect. But if you go to Jeff A. Brightwell on X or Instagram, then just Jeff Brightwell at LinkedIn or YouTube.
For those out there, I'll put all of that in the show notes. And if you're watching, it'll be on the broadcast right here. Okay, so what do you see your value as today?
Hmm. Well, that's a tough question. I
I
mean,
love that question. Actually, that question came about when our first interview was with William Bedford, and I
yeah,
threw that in at the end. And bless his heart, it took him by surprise, and his response was, "I don't think I have a value to anybody today." And I found that to be a very interesting question to ask people.
right. I mean, I know I've got my friends who love me, and I mean, I've got value to them.
Right.
A storyteller. I mean,
Hmm.
when it all comes down to it, uh, what we're going to have at the end of the day is our stories.
Hmm.
So I'm very fortunate to be able to tell a lot of people's stories. I mean, you can't take anything with you when you die, and you know, I guess it was a couple of years ago. Like, and we all grinded earlier in our career, and I'm fortunate now to be making a living, and I'm able to do a few things now. You're never going to be rich being a broadcaster, but
Right.
when I'm able to travel or do something like that, I don't want to buy stuff. I don't need the nicest
Exactly.
house, the nicest car. I want to have experiences, and those experiences are your stories. And maybe my value is just in sharing the story of individuals, the
Sure.
university, whatever organization I'm working for. I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but
It's whatever. I think
that
it's a
is
great answer. It's a great answer. It's also one that I think it's caught people off guard, but it's also made them step back and like look at themselves in a different way, in a different perspective. But I love asking that question. And finally, if you could go back and talk to your 9-year-old self, what would you say?
just do it. I know that's the Nike phrase, but I mean, if that's what you want to do it. I'm fortunate. My late mother, who died 3 years ago, I was never going to be a lawyer or a doctor, but I mean, she's like, if you can make a living and you want to do it,
Yeah,
do what makes you happy. So I just tell them to do it. Stay in the game. That's what I tell the young broadcasters when they start out. Look, you're not going to be on ESPN when you get out of college. You're going to have to grind. You're going to have to not make a whole lot of money at all, but people are going to quit. They're going to quit early and get out of it because they're not big time.
Right.
You're going to grind it out for 10, 15 years. It stinks. You're going to get in credit card debt probably because you're not making money. You're going to have to do odd jobs. I'll never forget when I was calling women's basketball. I'm on a charter flight one night. The next day I'm out delivering as a courier at the airport. You talk about staying humble, because I'm looking over at that airplane going, I was on that airplane last night. Now I'm delivering somebody else's mail. So just stay in it. And I would just tell 9-year-old Jeff, just do it. That's what you want to do. Do it.
I think it builds character and gives you more, I don't know, substance or whatever.
When people say, I heard someone say this, is like, everyone goes, you only live once, but that's not true. There's like, you only die once.
Yes.
You can live every day.
Yes.
So if it's something you want to do it.
Absolutely. Okay, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a blast. It was fun.
Thank you all for listening, especially if you've made it all the way to this part of the show. I appreciate all of your support. Another reminder, subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. My mantra is like, share, and review. Follow us on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.